So after that 3 a.m. call with Jessica, I did something I should have done years earlier. I tracked it. For 30 days, I tracked every single time someone asked me, how do we do this? Every time I had to re-explain something, every time a team called another team member to ask about a process, every training session that was just someone showing someone else what to do. You know what I found? Do you want to know what I found? 31 hours per month. 31 hours of re-explaining how we do things. That's not training new processes. That's re-explaining existing processes that should have been documented once and referenced forever. 31 hours times our average labor cost, that's over $1,200 per month, almost $15,000 per year in just re-explanation time. But here's what makes this even worse for service businesses. It's not just about your time, it's about client trust. You see, in a product business, if your team doesn't know the process perfectly, the customer might not even notice. The widget still ships. Maybe it takes an extra day. Maybe there's a small quality variance, but the customer gets their widget. In service, inconsistency destroys trust immediately. Think about it. You're at the doctor's office. One nurse does an intake one way, the next nurse does it completely different. One asks about your medication, one doesn't. One explains everything, one rushes through. How does that make you feel? Like they don't have their act together, right? Maybe you should find a different doctor. That's what undocumented processes do to client trust. Every time your service delivery is inconsistent, you're telling clients, we're making this up as we go. Now, some of you are thinking, but we do train people. We have training sessions. We do shadowing. We do onboarding. So did we. But here's what I learned. Training without documentation is just expensive storytelling. Because here's what happens. Sarah trains Jessica. Jessica thinks she's got it. 3 weeks later, Jessica encounters the situation. She thinks she remembers what Sarah said, but she's not quite sure. So she does her best guess. She does some great guessing, which is different from what Sarah does, which is different from what Michael does. And now you don't have one process, you have 12 versions of the same process, all slightly different, all creating inconsistency and eroding client trust. Just train them better. Doesn't that solve the problem? Because people forget, people leave, people interpret differently. You need documentation that everyone references, not tribal knowledge that lives in people's heads. Let me give you a real example. We were consulting with a home care agency, similar to A Touch of Love, but in a different market. And they came to us because their client retention was tanking. 68% retention. In home care, that is disaster territory. So we observed their operation. And you know what we found? They had 8 different client intake processes. Not 8 client with customized approaches, 8 different ways their team did the same process. Some caregivers documented medication schedules on a form, some used a notebook, some just remembered. Some called the family every day with updates. Some called once a week. Some never called unless there was a problem. The clients were confused, the families were frustrated, and the agency couldn't figure out why people kept leaving. We helped them document one process, one intake, one communication protocol, one medication documentation. Within 90 days, retention jumped to 89%. 89%. Same team, same services, just documented processes instead of hope. Here's the hard truth. I had to accept that the night after Jessica called. Every time you say they should know how to do that, you're operating on hope. Every time you say, just ask whoever's been here the longest, you're operating on hope. Every time you think, we've always done it this way, everyone gets it, you're operating on hope. And hope is dangerous. Hope is what kills service businesses because hope-based operating isn't sustainable. It doesn't scale, it doesn't create consistency, and it sure as hell doesn't build legacy. But here's the problem. Most business owners don't just operate on hope. They fall into one of three traps that make it even worse.